I'm just going to talk about some basic techniques that I'll go through, some warm-ups that you can use to actually strengthen your hands. I know for what I do all kinds of drumline stuff at the high end, and a lot of what we work on develops strength in both hands. Obviously, playing drums, so you can get kind of heavy on one hand, and the other hand could be a little bit deficient compared to your right hand. But for all the stuff we do, it's always the snare drummers or tenor drummers or whatever you have to have equal strength and dexterity in both hands. So the thing that we usually do is we have large muscle groups in your forearm, you have your wrist, and then small muscle groups in your fingers. So you have all these things you can use to play. Right? We'll start out with small muscle groups, and there's an exercise that a student of mine kind of developed called stick yoga. And what he does is he actually takes each finger and conditions each one. Actually, I keep forgetting the drummer's name from Europe, who developed a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah, I heard it.
I keep thinking Benny Grubb, but it's not Benny Grubb, it's another guy. Kind of big, bushy hair. I was thinking about it last night, I couldn't remember his name. Anyway, just I wanted to give credit because he's like one of the guys who really does a lot of this kind of technique. But what we do is try and really just move one finger at a time to develop small muscles in all of your fingers. So when you actually are playing singles, you have every muscle being used. Sometimes if you, like where your fulcrum is, you can grip a little bit too tight, the pinky comes off, all those things. And every time you take anything away from the stick, you're taking away strength and sound that you can produce. Right? So the idea is just take one finger, your index finger first, have it kind of rotate with your thumb, and only push with the finger. Try to move your wrist almost not at all. And it'll work either way, if you're playing like a French grip or if you're playing more on top like a German grip. The idea is just to go back and forth and get each finger, just doing 8 on each hand. Now, get the left hand. Now stop a second, switch, put the finger in between your index finger and your middle finger now, and isolate that. So the only thing you do, the wrist won't move. You're just pressing that one finger. Then go back and forth with that. Yeah, so actually if you look at it, it feels awkward at first, but the whole idea is that one finger goes on there and just pushes. So the only thing you're using is that finger. It's kind of like almost doing like a piano exercise. You're really isolating just the muscles in this finger. So you try and get the wrist to not move at all. Isolate just that finger. Okay, same thing, switch. Put it down to the weaker fingers now. So you got ring fingers doing this. And only the finger moves. There you go. And try and keep the finger in contact the entire time while you're doing it. Dr. Dunn.
Yeah, with the left hand?
Yeah. That's the whole point, just gets the strength out of both hands. So from what I've seen, like the style you guys play, it's fast singles almost all the time. So you got to get the left hand conditioned the same way the right hand is.
Yeah.
Then, of course, the pinky, which is the most fun, isolate that one. Then, both thumbs. Even though you're not necessarily playing a traditional grip, still your thumb is obviously important, this muscle here. So condition both hands by only using your thumb muscle. You don't turn your wrist at all. So you're just conditioning this area right here. the thing to do is just kind of cycle through that, like do 8 on each hand, switch, 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 go to your thumbs, and do about 4 rounds of that. And you'll be amazed how warm just your hands feel. It doesn't do anything to your wrist necessarily, but all these muscles all of a sudden feel like they're firing basically. Your brain is sending a message to each muscle in your hand, so everything functions evenly, right? So you become more aware of, if you're playing any singles, every single finger is contributing to that, not just working on the front fulcrum. So it actually helps relieve some stress off your wrist too. So obviously, if you put too much tension in your fulcrum and you're always like putting pressure to play, you're gonna end up doing damage to your wrist at some point. So you wanna be as efficient as you possibly can while you're playing, especially as fast as you guys play. So that's really important to do that. Then next thing, you know what? Why don't we move the tables up a little bit and get a pad and get everyone actually, someone get a chair and play on one side of the pad too if you want. Next thing would be like some wrist conditioning exercises, or one exercise. Pad there. Someone's get a chair, someone else can play on this side. So you can actually, I mean, the important thing is that if you're going to do any of this, is to experience playing on a pad. Come on, man.
Gotta put me on the spot, all right? Come on, man.
There we go. All right, so after going through getting the fingers warmed up, there's a book called Stick Control from 1934. It's the most basic technique book there is, and it's probably still the best one that's out there too. It goes through all the different combinations of rights, lefts. I mean, most rudiments or anything you're going to play is either a combination of 1, 2, or 3 note combinations. You can pretty much play any rudiment or anything by combining this or that. You know, 1, 2, or a combination of 3. So the stick control book, the first few pages, what it does, it just kind of coordinates both hands. It's just 8 notes or 16 notes, depending on how you want to look at it. It goes through, I took like the first 4 patterns and made it into just a simple exercise of, we have 1 measure of just alternating strokes, then 3 rights and 1 left. Then alternating strokes, 1 right and 3 lefts. Alternating strokes, 4s, and doubles. Go on down, play it. So you can see how this functions. And the idea is, the fingers are warmed up, so you're incorporating the finger movement with the wrist and just trying to get as much an even sound, just completely monotone sound the entire time. So no matter what sticking pattern you play, you're still trying to get to sound like that. So the first 8 bars of the exercise is like, okay, so we'll go through each 2 bars like one segment, which is slower, so everyone can get the idea of this. So the first segment. Do this again. Ready? One time through. Just play this pattern. Right. Next one. Just 1 right and 3 lefts. 4 counts of in between each one of those patterns. So it's 1 measure of this, 2, 3, 4, then 3 right to the left, 1 measure is straight, 1 right, 3 lefts, then 4s on each hand, then 2 on each hand. You can just tie that together. All right, here we go. 1, 2, ready? That's like the simplest exercise to warm your hands up and get equal strength out of both hands. It just balances out. So, and playing that soft too. So. The rest of the exercise is basically taking it down a notch. So from where we left off would be. You take each pattern, just like cut it down to 2 count patterns and then 1 count of each. So it's kind of, you can actually just experiment around with that. Once you have those 4 patterns, you can do pretty much anything with them. But it'll strengthen your left hand up quick, or it'll tell you what's up with the right and left balance. Anything else for sure. Let's see. What else is there? If you guys have questions about anything about technique or anything else, let me know. Let's see.
As far as the first exercise with this, is this more of a workout or just sort of like just to warm your...
It really is. There's nothing about time in there at all. It's strictly to warm the muscles up in the hand. And I did it with, you guys know a guy named Smitty Smith, jazz player. He was on Tonight Show for the last 20 years or whatever. But a couple years ago, he wanted to do some stuff, and I just started kind of working on that. And I took him through it. We did about 4 or 5 rounds of it, and all of a sudden he just stopped and went, my hands have never, ever felt this warm. So it's just the idea of really, you know, it's almost a little bit of a scientific approach, man. I mean, you got all these small muscles that can be used, especially when you're playing, you know, anything down here low. It's the thing you want to do is have the part of your hand that's closest to the beat of the stick control what you're playing. You don't want it from up here or on your wrist, really. It's like the smallest muscles that you have are going to get those notes. Same thing if you're playing open rolls. Do some open roll stuff a little bit too. But, you know, breaking down an open roll, which is something that would be useful for you guys, for this style music, you know? To take some of the pressure off just playing singles all the time, you just get And really, that's a combination of the wrist, keep your wrist as limber as possible, and use your fingers to get the second note. But at the same time, you're really trying to play both notes equal strength. There's a lot of ways to explain it. I've seen different ways of saying, you know, having push, pull to play a double, where you kind of drop a stick and then grab it on the way back up. For me, for what I do, for doing drumline stuff, you just want it to be, I try and get your fingers and the wrist to be as limber as possible and actually play both notes the same strength. And then actually get ahead of myself. Let's do that. And I will do this double exercise. Simple double exercise. It's based on triplets. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Left. Right. Count them both. Double stops. Right. stick comes down, try to not let it stop at all, especially if I'm watching some left hands. Try and keep, like, large muscle group helps the wrist move, and then it goes down into the fingers. The thing you want to do is have a constant flow in the stick, so it doesn't, you're not stopping it. Right? Back to right, eight counts to right, eight left, and then you got it. Come on, man, get up here. You got sticks in your hand? 1, 2, 1, 2, right? It's just a simple exercise and it gets both hands going. And really, when you're playing double stops especially, that's when you find out if you have a deficiency from the less dominant hand, because the left hand will start freaking out. Yeah.
Can you ever use too much of your hands? I've heard people telling me, like, you know, these rolls or whatever. I taught myself. But then I've had people tell me, well, that's not the correct way to do it. Like, you know, that time I didn't know about rudiments, but I have, like, even my own students, I have them mostly use, like, a lot of the, maybe the thumb and the wrist, but mostly on this. So, like, just sort of like a casting type thing, you know?
You know what? There's so many different techniques, and really, what you know, a good technique is something that produces a good sound. That's a good technique. I mean, there are different ways, and there's definitely things you can do, like the stuff I'm talking about, that makes it you want to be as efficient as possible when you play. You know, so I mean, that's why, like, I'm watching most of you guys are playing like what would be considered a French grip. For timpanus is what that, and that's a whole different thing, because your wrist motion is this way instead of this way, which is fine. You know, it's still, you have a big motion, you have your arm that you can use, the wrist, and still the fingers. It's just a slightly different way to do it. It's a matter of, if you're going to play one technique, you probably, I mean, it's good to just kind of mess around with as many techniques as you can find, but whatever works best for you is the right technique, and whatever produces the best sound is the best technique. So, yeah, I know there's people that can be real sticky about, you have to do it this way. No, you don't. You have to do it the way that feels good and produces a good sound for you. You know? And there's lots to learn. I mean, that's the whole thing. I think if you keep an open mind and just look at the way a bunch of different players play, and I still look for ways to play more efficient. You know, I'm 51, and still I got lots to learn. So I feel like I'm never going to stop learning, which is good. I don't want to.
That's true.
So anyway, so that whole thing, like with the double stops, that's the one thing, you know, I'm playing an open roll to get evenness out of it, you know, so you can translate for this. Open roll would happen, okay? Let's see, what else? Any other questions? No? My list again. I guess the one of the things too, talking about rolls. Going back and forth with double stroke rolls. Singles, then go in between. So the idea is, again, to try and keep your technique as consistent as possible. So if you want to play anything, your hands automatically make subtle adjustments, like you're going from playing double strokes, singles. Those types of things. Let's see what would be a good exercise for doing that. Actually, still, the stick control stuff is probably the best thing to get those working. Accent patterns. So we kind of incorporate more of the large muscle group to play accents, and then ghost notes are with a small wrist movement and then fingers. Let's try that. Just play some triplets. 8 right hand and 8 left hand. The idea, are you guys familiar with Moeller stroke? I'm sure a lot of you guys have checked out Moeller stroke at all. Moeller technique. Yeah. The idea is, I don't know that much about it. I just see some guys play it and talk to one of the guys who studied with the Moeller person. The idea is, again, to still take pressure off your wrist, is the arm generates the motion of the stick. So it's basically almost like a whip. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
so that way you put no pressure on your wrist at all. Right? It's just strictly the movement and the energy that you create from the stick. Then use the small muscle groups to play the ghost notes. So if you play there's basically no pressure where your vocal is. Yeah, like that. Exactly. So same thing, but I mean the point being is you have both hands do the same thing. Let's try 8 on the right and 8 on the left. Now, what that does too, again, going back to what double stops, when you're going back to playing singles, your left hand has equal strength. You'll notice the difference in the sound where you're not hearing the right hand dominate. All of a sudden, it turns into you hear equal sound out of both hands. So, I mean, those are really the easiest ones. There's nothing difficult about it. Actually, the stick control book is probably the best thing to get. You guys can hit me up on that Facebook page, and I can send a couple pages of some stuff because and you don't have to read music. It's like all the stickings are written in, so you're just going to see the same rhythm written down over and over, and all you have to do is follow the stickings. So that would be an easy way to kind of learn this stuff.
What about like double strokes? What would be a good exercise for that?
I got a bunch of stuff. Really.
Or is it like, because I see some guys like they do some crazy rolls and stuff. They hit it so many times.
Yeah, there's duple rolls and then triple rolls. Like an example of a triple roll exercise, and you're basically taking measured triplets, and then you start playing one double on the first partial of the triplet, a double on the second partial, meaning second partial, third partial. You go from there, and you start combining groupings of 2 doubles. Here, I'll just play the whole thing, just so you can hear how it works. Longer ones. The 2 long ones again. There's that. Then there's another one that's in duple meter, so 16th notes, the same idea. It's just very logical. You just go from progression of 1 to the second 16th to the third 16th, fourth 16th. And those exercises, you can actually play them as groupings of doubles or open rules, or you can actually play them as alternating strokes the entire time too, which opens up your hands that much more too. So even that the last exercise that you did, I'll play it with no doubles, all alternating strokes all the way through. When you go through and play all alternating strokes, you have some right-hand dominant patterns and some left-hand dominant patterns. So you can get, get this moving, which is a whole different world too. It used to be right-hand dominant all the time. Yeah?
Do you happen to have this written down?
Yes.
Can you mind sharing it?
Oh, absolutely. On the Facebook, I'll put it up, or I'll do some if you. Am I on that? I'll figure out a way to get it. I was going to bring tape. I wasn't sure. I'll get copies of all this stuff to you guys. Whoever wants it, you can have it.
Yeah.
I got no. It's all basic stuff. No big deal. So that's kind of it as far as the chop stuff goes. I mean, there's other stuff we can get into with flams, but I think that pretty much covers just getting your hands and muscles conditioned and getting balance between your right and left hand as far as getting some, some strength and consistency out of your hands. Any other questions?
Would it matter what kind of sticks you use for, I guess, for like this kind of practice?
Not really. No. I mean, obviously I prefer sticks with a little more weight. These are actually small.
Yeah.
Still, for rudimental players. I got the other ones that are like a size up from these. But my hands hurt a little bit too much these days when I start playing with those too much. It's like a mid-range stick. But I mean, there's things, there's some kind of, I'm not sure what it's made of, if they're aluminum, some metal sticks that you can get there that are really, really good because they're so heavy, it just moves your hand. So you kind of train yourself to get limber wrists without putting any pressure on the stick at all. I'm not sure who makes them, but I think they're like 75 or 80 bucks. But I've had some friends that have had those things that practice with those. Then you put another pair, it's like having nothing on your hands. But I mean, just whatever sticks you're used to using, get used to manipulating those.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Anything else? Yes?
You know how you said about that you would hear the beat, not like your right hand getting louder than your left hand?
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to actually get them equal in sound?
I'm still working on it.
Oh.
But I mean, I've been doing this since I was 9. You're 8, right?
Yeah.
See, if you start drumming now, you'd have a year head start on me. But I started exactly almost like this, at a little community center where they had a group lesson on Sundays at like a Lions Club thing or something. With a bunch of kids and one guy just sitting up on the stage just playing on some carpet, some nasty old carpet on some kind of stage, just playing all this stuff. But the one stick control exercise, the little groupings of 3 and 4, that one of my first instructors taught me that when I was about 13. And that stayed with me. Every group I teach plays that exercise. It doesn't matter whether they're beginners or the highest end drumline guys. That exercise works for everything. It's probably the smartest and the most universal way to just get your hands warmed up and get equal strength up in both hands. It's simple too. But if you do that regularly, you'll notice a difference in your sound and just the way your left hand feels, because you have to have the same amount of strength in both hands to be able to play those exercises. Anything else?
When I play, my hand usually cramps up from here. Is that anything?
Too much pressure right here. If you squeeze with your index finger and your thumb, how that muscle tenses up.
Yeah.
Try and emphasize, I think for a while, if you play some of these exercises slow, try and emphasize your middle finger a little more. And try not to put pressure. That's the whole thing about using your entire hand. So you feel no pressure with the thumb and the index finger. I mean, there's people that play, with the index finger extended this way, and use like a 3-point fulcrum, so it's all 3 of these fingers. I've kind of gone around to every single one. I've kind of come back to having my index finger underneath, but without pressing. So So you're actually still using that muscle, but you're not pushing on the stick. And it's hard to, I mean, there's certain speeds that you play at that you're going to start tensing up. It's a matter of trying to regulate that as much as you can so you can play, longer into playing fast stuff without, doing damage to your wrist, because where the nerve tunnel is, that's where you get carpal tunnel. There's like a nerve tunnel that goes right in here, and there's all kinds of little bones across your wrist that will get jammed up if you're pressing on that constantly. So, and we all think we're invincible until you get to like my age, and then you go, yeah, I need to be smarter about the way I play. One wrong move and I can do some damage, and that's it. But really, just try and, if you're just playing like groups of 3 over and over, and just be aware of how much you're pushing on the stick. So, I mean, if the energy that you produce is going to rebound off the drum. So.
Also, when you're practicing warm-ups, is it? Well, I heard like if you play like lower, I guess, not the stick so high. I guess would it help? Like,
Both, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's an exercise. Actually, I should have done this. A 16-note pyramid where you just play all real soft, doubles, 4, 8, 16, 32, and really keep it as low as you can. And do it up to like 16 counts of that on each end, and just cycle through that too. And that helps because that's a good test too, actually, about talking about fulcrum. If you have trouble keeping the stick low, or actually it's hard to keep the stick low, so the tendency is to want to put pressure on that. And that's a good exercise to actually teach yourself to not do that. So you just keep it, it's your whole hand that moves the stick. So it's not just finger movements. I think one of the points about the way I teach is to try and really have a smooth transition from using your fingers to your wrists, or if you're using arms and shoulders too. Have it, work on stuff so it's a clean transition from whatever you're playing. So there's no, and I have a lot of students and stuff that will try and play certain things, but they play too dominant on fingers, and when they try and change patterns or change grooves, they can't, because they're all of a sudden like doing something completely different with the technique, and they can't transition out of one phrase to another phrase because there's too much of a drastic difference in the way they play. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Any other questions?
I have one thing. I know I came a little late. Did you cover any like basic Flam exercises?
No.
I know because I know with extreme drumming, I've noticed that especially with the blast, it's a lot to do with syncopation and a lot of the Flam. So I was wondering, maybe you can probably show the newer dudes the exercises, basic exercises.
Well, everyone knows what Flam is, right? Yeah. So like grace note and a main stroke, the grace note drops right before. And there's various ways to play it. You can play them very open, but the way we do it, it's got to be all controlled because you got a number of guys that got to look exactly the same and sound the same doing it. But the basic idea is just drop the grace note right before. There's all kinds of other patterns that go along with that, Flam accents or Flam triplets. You're just playing a Flam on every downbeat. Then we can get into different other rhythms that have incorporate like short roll patterns and Flams. So you have Flam drags, which are actually putting a Flam on the beginning of a double. So instead of this pattern, you just add a grace note to it, and you get or. And Flams are kind of cool. I mean, it's just instead of playing an accent, it kind of thickens up. It's a different texture. It gives you a different vibe. Yeah.
So is a Flam a downbeat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a triplet. You can get all kinds of combinations with that stuff too. That's all. Yeah, kind of big. I mean, you can take just even that triplet pattern, change the stick. So it's triplets, you play a Flam. Do those on both hands, get that condition. Anything else? That's all I'm
Thank you,
doing now.
Glenn.
So. Yeah, thanks guys. Maybe we'll be able to do
I'm gonna
some.
have a round of applause for Glenn.